Hi, I'm Steve the Bread Guy, and these two creations are quinoa breads. The bread's made out of half flour, regular flour, and half quinoa. Quinoa is a grain that comes from the Andes. It's very popular among vegetarians because it's really high in protein. Well, this is a very high protein bread because it's about 50-50 quinoa and regular white flour. And it smells and tastes so good. It's got a bit of honey in it. It goes into nice ring shapes very easily. It's got a nice crunchy crust, and on the inside it's nice and soft, a little bit yellow, and has a little bit of crunchiness because of the raw quinoa that's being put inside. A really nice bread, and I would be happy to show you how to make it. Okay, so how do we make one of these quinoa breads? Well, obviously we'll start with a bowl, and the first step is really pretty straightforward. We're just going to put some yeast in the bowl, and then put some warm water into it. So, as usual, I just use instant dry yeast, okay, instant dry active yeast. So 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoons, okay, and then I put some warm water in there. So 2 cups of warm water does it, and water should be warm enough that it just starts to hurt your finger when you put it in. So there goes the warm water, and that usually takes about 10 minutes for the yeast to activate because it likes warmth. So it responds to the warmth and it starts to, well, it'll look like it starts to bubble and make a scum on the top. What it's really doing is waking up and starting to react. So next thing is you should know what ingredients we're going to need for this. So in addition to some regular white flour, as usual for this kind of recipe, I've also bought some quinoa flour. So quinoa is it has a slightly bitter taste to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of honey to the recipe, and near the end, when we roll these things out, I'm going to add some red quinoa, raw red quinoa to it. You can see it there. So that'll give this thing a nice crunch and a really nice look on the outside. So this yeast is going to take about 10 minutes to get going. So I'm going to go away, and when I come back, the yeast will have formed a scum on the top, and I can show you the next steps. So stay with me. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes, and the yeast is doing exactly what it should, which is scumming up. That means it's woken up. So now we're going to do a couple of things to get this going. I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of salt into there. This is for taste. It has nothing to do with it chemically. Just tastes better this way. And some people have said to me, in emails that, no, the salt kills the yeast. That is simply not true. Maybe a lot of salt kills the yeast, but not this much. So next, I'm going to add a couple of cups of regular white flour. The flour that I use is just the stuff which I buy in the store, regular store. This is just regular white flour. I live in Canada, so all-purpose flour works fine because it's got a nice high protein content. If you live in the United States, you should probably buy bread flour, and other parts of the world as well. There's specific types of flour made for bread, because all-purpose flour in other parts of the world doesn't have as much protein as it does here. And it's the high protein content which gives the bread its strength, so that when it rises it doesn't fall again. So, a couple of cups of white flour in there, just mix it up until it becomes a bit of a muddy mess. And then we're going to add the quinoa flour. So I put in about 1.25 cups of this. And it'll give the bread a nice sort of yellowish tinge, which is nice. And if you smell it, you can smell it's got a bit of an earthy flavor to it, which that's why we're going to add a little bit of honey, because that'll take the edge off of that. So you might wonder, why quinoa? Well, for one thing, quinoa is actually really great on its own. If you just cook it with hot water, it fluffs up very nicely, and you make for nice grainy salads, and it absorbs other flavors really well. But so why put it into bread? Well, quinoa has an even higher protein content than wheat flour does. Quinoa has a protein content of around 17%, that's what this flour does. I think it can go as high as like 35. And as a result, it's considered one of the better protein sources if you're a vegetarian and you want to keep up your protein without obviously eating meat. This is a good way to go. I mean, you can't live on this stuff, but it certainly helps fortify your diet with protein. So there's another quarter cup of the quinoa. So okay, so that's as much quinoa as I want to put in there. For the honey, I'm going to put in about 4 tablespoons of honey. So this is going to be definitely a sweet bread. And because it's a sweet bread, the sugar content will mean that you should probably cook it at 375 in the oven rather than the usual 400, because it's going to brown a little bit faster than most breads do, just because of the higher sugar content. So there's 1, 2. I'm using wildflower honey, but pretty much any kind of honey would do. There's 3. So seeing as I'm doing this in a bit of a sloppy way, that's probably pretty close to 4 already, so I'm just going to put a little bit more in. So 3½ sloppy tablespoons of honey. Let's get that off of there. And I'm just going to mix it up. And for this one, there's a lot of different shapes you can make out of breads. So this one I think I'll make at least 1/2 of it into a ring, which looks quite nice. And I'm going to roll it in these red quinoa, this raw red quinoa, which will give it a nice look and a good texture too. So just do it like this. It's eventually going to get to the point like this where it's really, really hard to stir with a spoon. So that's when you have to get your hands in there. So I'm just going to put this a little bit in. Yep. Once it starts to adhere like that, it's time to get messy with your hands. So pat your hands in the flour first. And then you can start to knead it and mix it. I find that quinoa is fairly thirsty, so I leave the dough a little bit damp, not as dry as I would with a white dough, like a pure white bread dough. And my technique here is if my hands get sticky, I just put a little more flour on there. My technique here in the bowl is just to push it down and then fold it in half over top of itself as though you're making a sandwich, and then push it down again. So I do that a few times, scrape the bowl to make sure that nothing's sticking to the side. And then I'm going to pull it up into my hands and do it over top of the bowl. Which is what I'm about to do once I get it off the bottom there. So nothing tricky about this. And there's no need to knead it for like 20 minutes. 5 minutes, or, well, I think I'm probably going to end up doing it for about 3 minutes here. It's fine. You just want to do it until you get the right consistency. And it's easier to see the consistency and feel it than to talk about it. You don't want it to feel raggedy. You want it to feel smooth and elastic. So just in here, I'm just squeezing it and sort of pushing my fingers in, then turning it to the side and doing the same thing again to sort of over and over. This is still too sticky, so I'm going to put a little more white flour on there. Woo. There we go. So okay, so there's the ball. You can see it holds to itself quite well. So that means it's ready. So let's move that out of the way. I'm just going to scrape off the excess here. Give it a toss into the compost. And I'm just going to put some oil in here. This is so it won't stick to the bowl as it rises. So you put it in like that, turn it over once, turn it over again, so now it's got oil all around it. And I'm just going to wash my hands and put the wet tea towel that I used to dry off my hands over top, and then it's going to rot. There you go. I will see you in an hour. Okay, so it's been just a little bit over an hour, and let's see how this turned out. Oh, good. So as you can see, it doubled quite nicely. No problem putting the quinoa flour in there to get it to double. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to punch it down. So I'm just going to put a little bit of flour in my hands and punch it down like that, and then pull it out of the bowl and squeeze all the bubbles out. Because while we've been waiting, the yeast has been eating the flour, carbohydrates in the flour, creating carbon dioxide gas, which has filled up the flour, puffing it up into that ball. And now I'm squeezing out that gas, and we'll give it another try at doing that when it rises the second time. Now, I think to show you some of the things you can do with this particular type of bread, what I'd like to do is I'm going to divide this into two pieces, roughly equal, like that. Get rid of the bowl now. And one of these I think I'll roll out into a snake and then make it into a circle. And the other one I'm just going to make into a plain, into a regular loaf pan, but a small one since I've divided this into two. So why don't we do that first? So I'm just going to use a small tinfoil loaf pan, which you can get at any dollar store. I'm going to put some oil into it. So just put oil all the way around it because it's going to rise to fill a lot of it. So just put it all into every little crack. And of course, if you have a small baking pan, loaf pan of your own that's not disposable or tinfoil, by all means use it. So there we go. So I'm just going to take this, do a couple more squeezes, and then I'm going to put it in, and it'll take about an hour for its second rise. Okay, I can still hear the bubbles coming out, which is good. So just form it into a shape like that. Make the most folded side of it go on the bottom. Just plop it in there and cover it with a damp towel. Wipe your hands off onto the towel and put the towel over top. Your hands have been all over this anyway, so it's not like it's going to get dirty or germ-ridden from that. So I'm just going to put that over there because the next step is I want to roll this one out into a snake and make a round. Now for that, let's see how big that is. So for that, what we're going to do is I'm going to put some flour onto the table. About a quarter cup of flour, say. Spread it out like this. Make sure your tabletop's clean, of course. So, to do that, I'm just going to roll it out a bit. Like this. So just flatten it. So I'm going to basically make a baguette shape, and then instead of making a baguette, I'm going to make it into a snake, or rather I'm going to form it into a circle. I want to get it nice and thin first. And if you have a baguette pan, you can certainly put this, what I'm about to do, into a baguette pan as well. And I've done a video with white bread showing you how, even if you don't have a baguette pan, you can create a sort of homemade one with jars. And I highly recommend taking a look at that one. Once I started making things which looked like baguettes, I found that my family just started eating my bread non-stop, even more than they were before. Something about the baguette shape which makes it easier to make sandwiches out of. The kids tell me that the crust stays crustier and stuff stays inside the sandwich without getting soggy. I guess the French had a reason for making baguettes in that shape. So just roll it out like that. Into it. Like this. Okay, so just raw quinoa, and I've got some down here as well, just sprinkle around. Okay, and then I'm going to roll it up on its shortest edge first. Like that. As you can see, that puts the quinoa seeds right into it, which is nice. And then at the edges, just take one end of it and pull it over the exposed end and tuck it underneath. And then just squeeze it so you get the longest shape you can. The other end, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to pull it over, tuck it under. Make sure that the edge that edge is underneath it when it rises. You won't see that. Okay. That's good. I'm just going to take a few more seeds, put them over here. And don't worry about the white flour getting on top of it. That'll be nice, actually. That gives a nice look. So roll it one more time, mix up a few more. And now, what I want to do is just make it into a round. So I'm going to go like that. Hold that over. Squeeze those bits together so that they'll bake together. Make sure that the bottom end, the fold on the bottom, is truly on the bottom. Okay, so now I'm going to put it onto a pan. Oh dear, got flour all over me. Occupational hazard. So now just put some oil into a pan. Rub it around. Like that. Carefully grab our snake. On top. Stretch that in there. And this will meld into itself as it rises. Surely as it bakes. So it should be alright. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to leave that for an hour as well. Just let me get a damp cloth. I'll put it over top. And then these two, just put them where you can see them. These two will get an hour to rise, and then we'll put them into the oven and bake them. And they'll turn out very nicely, and they taste great. The honey flavor combined with the quinoa is a really nice combination. So I think you'll like it. And this one will look particularly pretty because of the seeds, which will create a nice counterpoint and decoration on it. So just let me cover that up, and I will see you in an hour. Okay, so I'm back. It's a little bit over an hour since I saw you last, and as you can see, these things have both risen really nicely. So there's the loaf. Looks terrific. Nice little loaf, and here is our ring, which has worked out quite well, actually. But so, the next step then is to put these guys into the oven. I've set the oven for 375. Because of the honey in both of these, they'll get quite brown if we do them at 400. So 375, it should take about half an hour. I'm going to keep an eye on it because they're different shapes. That one will probably take longer than this one because there's more surface area for this one to get heated on. So I'm going to look in around 23 minutes on this one to see how it's doing. To make the oven even better than just warm, I've also put a bowl of water into it. I put that in before I turned on the oven so that the water would evaporate as the oven warmed up. The oven's quite steamy. That will provide a nice crunchy crust to both of these, particularly this one since so much of it's exposed. Trick is when you open the oven, make sure that you keep your face out of the way as you open it because there's a blast of steam that comes out. So I'm going to put these in, and I'll be back with you in about half an hour to see how they both turned out. So let's put them in and see what happens. Well, I'm back. It's been about half an hour, about 24 minutes, and the ring roll, or the ring quinoa bread, is ready to come out of the oven. And I took out the other one just a couple minutes ago because it seemed, well, so beautifully done. As you can see, nice and brown, and it puffed up really well, kept its shape. Not surprising since it had half of it was white flour, which gives it its structure. Now I'm going to get the ring out. And there we go. There's the ring, looking very, very nice. I'm sure the little camera can get that. Oh yeah, they slide right off too. And there we go. So as you can see, these weren't difficult to make. They taste really good. The honey gives it a nice light flavor, and the quinoa will give it a nice yellow look on the inside. In fact, I want to slice one open for you so you can see. As you can see, the seeds go all the way through, which is really nice. It's got a nice sweet smell to it, and it's got a really good crust. A nice crunchy outside, not very soft and spongy on the inside, with a nice taste of honey. And it's hot, but the quinoa seeds also give it some crunch on the inside, which is nice. So you get a combination of sweetness with some crunchy crust and a little bit of chewiness from the quinoa seeds, and then the sweet softness of the bread itself. A really good combination. So I highly recommend trying this out. This one is also very nice as a plainer bread, not quite as crunchy because it doesn't have the crust all the way around it, but very nice for sandwiches. This is the kind of thing which, it looks impressive. It's obviously not hard to do. Looks impressive. You can bring it out at a dinner or bring it to dinner at somebody's place and they'll think you're amazing. And it tastes just so good. So I encourage you to try this. And remember, not a bad source of protein, both the wheat and the quinoa flour. So give it a go. Good luck, and let me know how it goes. I love getting emails from you guys. This is Steve the Bread Guy signing off. Sayonara, quinoa. Bye-bye.